Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 464 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So I want you to go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I've always been a really big fan of fraternity and sorority life because it provides love and belonging that we all need in order to be successful and ultimately reach our mission in life. Just ask Maslow's hierarchy. Student organizations and colleges like fraternities and sororities get you the social closeness and the connections that you need in order to be successful, not only in college, but for a lifetime beyond college as well. We're going to talk a little bit more about this idea with our next guest. Jason Corder, born in San Francisco in 1969, is a TEDx speaker, a keynote speaker, author, cultural envoy, and a coach who advises on mental and physical health. He's a graduate of Swarthmore College. He enjoyed a 20-year career as a visual artist in which he was awarded a Ballinglen Fellowship and was a Sovereign European Art Prize nominee. Having spent more than 2 decades living abroad in Africa and Europe, he hones this global perspective into his talks, workshops, podcast conversations, and the like to deepen dialogue and heighten perception. He lives with his 3 sons in the beautiful state of Arizona, where I just came back from going to check out some beautiful areas of that area. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you so much.
I
should also mention that I hone all of that into being that guy in aisle 6 who starts telling you his life story and he won't stop talking to you. So that's part of my work as well.
Well, you're going to have to tell our audience about Sedona because boy, oh boy, you are living in a beautiful place in the country.
Absolutely. Super lucky to be here. I will say I did leave my heart, in San Francisco 27 years ago now and counting, but as a plan B, can't really complain here. Pretty gorgeous place.
Those are 2 beautiful places. I mean, I've always said San Francisco is literally one of my favorite places on earth. I mean, it's just stunning. The water, the seafood, the people, there's so much to do and so much to see in that area. What can I say? I mean, plus Alcatraz is just really cool to me. So there's a lot of things that I really like about that area of the country, but I digress. You decided on Swarthmore College for your undergraduate experience, and our listeners want to know, why did you choose Swarthmore?
I still want to know as well. I'm still looking that's why I traveled around the globe asking everyone I meet, do you know why I went to this weird little Quaker school in the state of Pennsylvania?
Right.
No. I was senior year of high school in Marin County, just north of San Francisco. I had this wonderful English teacher who became my favorite teacher ever. Shout out to Martha Allen. And she just literally said to me one day, she said, look, she said, I went to the best college in the world. Okay, we're a little biased, but she said, it's called Swarthmore. I want you to go there. And I'm a very loyal guy. I'm a nice, if a cool woman tells me something like that, I'm going to probably do it. So I did. I applied for that and flew across the country and arrived to a wall of humidity and mosquitoes, 2 things I'd never really experienced before on the West Coast. But that was literally why it changed the entire trajectory of my life, because I ended up meeting my, wife or ex-wife there and traveling to Africa, a lot of that because of her. And so, I think if I'd gone to Berkeley, which is probably where I would have gone to if I hadn't had this Martha as my teacher, my whole life would have been completely different.
Yeah, Berkeley is a great place, but I tell you what, you probably did not have Swarthmore College on your bingo card when you went into high school. That probably was not what you were expecting, but hey, listen, everything turned out great and everything happens for a reason. I think you were supposed to meet that teacher who was supposed to get you over to Pennsylvania, and it all happened, and here you are. So everything worked out.
Absolutely. 100% believer in that as well. And it also introduced me for the first time in Westfield. I'm going to save this for later, but it introduced me to the first time in West Philadelphia to Eritrean/Ethiopian food, which is one of the things I want to talk to you about later, but I'm going to zip that up for a second.
Yeah, we got to talk about that. I mean, you decided to move to Nairobi, Kenya, of all places.
Yeah.
And I mean, your life is just incredible to me. What made you want to move to Kenya and talk
Yeah.
to our audience about what that experience was like for you?
Yeah. Well, I will say that again with the my wonderful ex-wife and the mother of my two of my three amazing boys. We both, I mean, she especially, but we both shared this idea of wanting to see new things and get outside the box. I think that was something that drew us to each other. So it was a sort of a mutual plan, but she was also the one who had the kind of, she's now, in the UN. So it was, some of it was pursuing her career. We also moved to a farmhouse in France, which was pursuing a place for me to paint for 7 years. So we kind of took turns navigating that, but it was always in the exploration of something new and different and seeing something we'd never seen before. But yeah, originally going to Nairobi specifically, where I went in 2008 and spent 11 years until finally coming to Sedona in 2019. Originally, it was for what was going to be a short contract of hers, and we went over there with our two boys. Life changed, and we ended up getting divorced there, and et cetera. We both ended up staying for 11 years and watching, taking care of our boys as they went through high school, et cetera. It was, again, I'm someone who had already traveled, so it was, I won't say it was a huge culture shock. But I will say, and this kind of getting into, I know the show that you wanted to talk about, my show that I created there about interracial relationships, but it was in a way a shock to go to a place and be there for a long time and be the outsider. And especially for myself, I think being there, not being there with a UN or a cushy job or a high paid job, just being there as more of an entrepreneur and an artist, you really get to feel and experience what it's like to be an outsider. And I think for those of us, in this country, especially those of us who are, of the light skin variety and sort of typically and historically have, been not in a good way, but sort of the dominators, or you could even say the privileged class of this country that we sort of, helped create. We've never experienced that. We've never had the chance as, white people, if I just to be blunt here in America, to know what it feels like to be an outsider. And it's a really, really completely life-changing experience to have that experience. And I feel lucky and grateful that I actually got to experience that. I think it's helped shape a lot of my work now. And it's something that, yeah, when you go over there, especially in my case, as you did, when I didn't go over there because I thought I was there to help anyone or I was superior to anyone, but I was just there for other reasons, it really helped me empathize with people all over the world who are outsiders and all of the people that have come to our country, from other countries, et cetera, who experience life every day as an outsider in this country. So that was one of the biggest things that I experienced and that I took away. But I really, even if it was challenging, it was, I'm grateful for having that as part of my experience.
What a great experience. I wanted to talk to you about one of the projects that you did over there. You worked on a project, it was called Stay, which is an African TV drama series. What did you learn specifically about this culture clash that exists between Blacks and whites, locals and foreigners in Africa? And how does that compare to what you see in the United States?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And don't get me started. It's one of my favorite subjects, and obviously it's just so many layers, so many layers around that question. But I will say, yes, I started writing scripts when I was in Nairobi, and lo and behold, got my first one funded by a company that was still existed then called Nokia, and got some nice product placement for the phones in our series. But yes, and I played the American, sort of kind of uptight, nerdy, green tech guy. Nothing to do with my real self whatsoever, pure fiction. But anyway, my character was in a relationship with this beautiful Kenyan woman who was played by the greatest actress in Kenya. Her name is Mkamze Mwatela, and hoping to still continue working with her on a spinoff. But yeah, I was looking at all of the comedy and drama of interracial relationships, at least as I saw them in Kenya and in Africa. I was also looking at some of the comedy and drama, though, of watching other foreigners come to Africa and how they deal with it when the taxi's late, how they deal with it with the traffic, things that they don't normally get in their own country or something. So looking at all of that, and my character was a bit of the comic relief chance for me to be a bit of a schmuck, or me to be a bit of just an uptight outsider complaining about this or that, and so I got to take out all of my sort of slight resentment towards the foreigners that would come and give us a bad name, if you will. I got to take that out on them a bit in the script. But to answer your question more deeply, again, so in Africa, it's a little more clear, these kinds of relationships that exist, and it's more accepted. And what I mean by that is you have this outside foreigner who's seen to have money, whether they do or not. But they're seen to have money because of their skin color and the association with the foreigners that come, having, tending to have more money than the average person there, although of course that's a generalization. And then you have these, beautiful Kenyans in this case, who are, kind of what they're offering is youth and beauty, and let's be honest, sex as well. And so you have this kind of relationship that would be seen as being a little bit sleazy or shady, maybe in our society. And over there, it is 100% accepted. Literally, pretty much everyone there accepts that you're going to have foreigners coming over who have this sort of imbalance economically with the women or the men that they're going out with who are locals. But there's a certain acceptance to that. So it really raises some moral questions for us as foreigners, right? Because if we saw something like, let's say, an older man, 30 years older than its younger, beautiful Kenyan woman, we saw that here in Los Angeles or New York, we'd be like, that's a little, come on, guys, that's sleazy. What's wrong with the guy? What's wrong with the woman? But it's interesting to learn that isn't looked at morally and over there. Having said that, there are really shitty power dynamics that go on because of that, where you have, older or wealthy men or whatever, and women going over there and sort of at times even of course preying on now younger local people who really need an economic hand up, and that's a way to get it. So those are some of the dynamics that are happening there. Obviously, it gets a lot worse than that. I'm giving a generalization. I mean, there's human trafficking, and it gets worse and worse. But I'm giving a kind of general picture of societally how that happens over there. I got to again experience this experience of being an outsider there, which for someone like myself is pretty rare in life, I would say. And I've had the privilege of being the person that didn't have to be the outsider in my life up until I left the country. But now looking at, if you turn the tables and you now look at that in the States, and it's hard because as an outsider in Africa, as a white person there, foreigner there, you do have a certain level of privilege as well. There's certain things that you were treated way better because of your skin color, but there's also a lot of ways in which people just want to use you and just get money from you or take advantage of you because you are this outsider. You're not part of their family, if you will, and therefore you're discardable. Those lessons from going through that can definitely be, I think everyone in this country who's lucky enough to have the privilege not to have to feel like an outsider every time they step out of their house, it would be a great training to send them over there for a while and get to experience what that's like. But it's of course not a symmetrical situation. So those of us in the States who wake up every day as outsiders here, either culturally or because of skin color or other factors, it's pretty much only shitty because you're the outsider, you're not seen as the insider, but you also don't have any kind of privilege that comes with that. Not really, maybe in a very surface level in some situations. So I don't know. I'm kind of blabbing on here. It's so many, like I say, so many layers. It's a really interesting topic. I think it'd be worth a whole podcast on its own, obviously, or a whole series of them, but that at least gives you some inkling a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's really good to start with. Just like you said, I mean, we could talk probably for an hour on that alone, just that one question. I watched your TEDx talk. It's really good. It's called Social Closeness and Re-Establishing Connection. And there you have a ton of positive feedback in the comments. You have 30,000 views and climbing. Knowing that many of our listeners are fraternity and sorority members in college today, what can you give them in terms of data or research that helps them to grow their organizations in college so that way we don't just stay isolated in our dorm room?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I mentioned to you already. I mean, I'm going to say shout out to you because there was something you said in a conversation we had earlier that made me start thinking about that. And now I love this question. So, yeah, the good news is there's an incredible amount of data to support the idea that people should join fraternities and sororities and should come together as part of that. It's actually, you could almost say it's ironic in a way, but I think it's pretty wonderful. So as you mentioned, my talk is talking about the benefits of social closeness, literally just being in close physical proximity to each other. And there's many benefits to that. There's many studies to back that up, and I'll give you some numbers right here in a second. But just to explain that very briefly, of course, there's the emotional feeling of hugging and feeling love and giving and receiving love and all of those parts of it. That's we all know that. But there's something else going on as well, which is we have these things called microbiomes, which is literally, you know what those are? That's millions of weird little bugs that look like they came out of an old Star Wars movie that are so small they're invisible, but they're all over our skin and they're all over our body and they're all inside of us. And keeping those guys happy is the key to our health. We literally know that now. And it turns out, and so according to, say, a 2023 study out of Oxford, teaches us that the greater the diversity of our microbiomes, the greater our health. It improves our immune system, and it goes on and on. Now, what that means is the more people that we touch, the more people that we hug, the more people that we come into at least close enough physical proximity that we're feeding the senses here, the greater our health. And again, there are mainstream studies. It's even more than that. I mean, if you're looking at those people who are isolated, especially if they're older, but in general these days, we have young people isolated, as you know, whether it's in their dorm room or someone who just is alone in their life. You have a 29% greater risk of heart disease, 32% increase risk of stroke. Again, these are mainstream from mainstream studies. If you live alone, having strong social relationships, that's IRL relationships, physical relationships, you have your likelihood to survive past the age of 70 increases by 50%. And if you're isolated, it goes the other way. The microbiome exchange helps our gut health, our blood sugar. It helps blood sugar control, appetite control. So it goes on and on. The numbers are there. So I love it. I can picture that someone, head of a fraternity or whatever, giving this speech. Like, you can literally legit talk about numbers from Oxford and the NIH as to why you should join our frat. So I think that is pretty amazing. And again, we know it. We know how we feel when we're in physical proximity to people. We feel good. We literally gain energy from each other especially when we're in a safe and supportive environment, obviously. But now we know that it's also on the science level and backed up by studies. And there's a whole bunch more I could go into there. But I think guys could literally legit give a sales pitch of why you should join, and they're not lying.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I really do. We are social animals, and I think we saw some of the downside of not being around people during the pandemic when there was this isolation period. We saw all kinds of issues in terms of mental health, and on and on and on. So I think there's something there. I think you really could give that pitch, which is kind of fascinating to me because nobody really, until I saw your TEDx talk, I couldn't really think of it that way. And then I watched your TEDx talk and I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of a no-brainer. We should be getting together in groups. It's better for us. But what's also interesting that just kind of caught me, and obviously I mentioned this to you too, is that the TEDx, they actually put up a warning message on your TEDx talk. So I'm wondering, what did that message teach you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wear that message as a badge of honor now. I've come to understand it better. And no, it's a great question, and I love the space to talk about this, openly and honestly, as we said,
Yeah.
because it's so vital to so many things that are important to us as people, as Americans, including free speech, and dialogue and critical thinking and open debate, which is really those are struggling right now in our society. So interestingly, talking about this idea of the greater our health from coming together. So there's Dr. Jake Bush. He's one of the most respected doctors in the world, one of the greatest, most genius minds that I've personally ever encountered. And he's one of the main people that I listen to that talks about, if someone asks them, well, what can we do right now for our health? What's the number one thing we can do for our personal health right now? And his answer is go and be around as many people as possible. Go and be in as many diverse environments as possible. That is, and that, what we were talking about with the microbiome. Well, interestingly, if you look up Dr. Jake Bush on Wikipedia, he doesn't have a page. He has only red flags and labeled as a conspiracy theorist. So it is really, truly, deeply shocking. And Wikipedia is something that we used to think of as being impartial, right? And objective. And again, this is truly one of the greatest minds on our planet, and clearly doesn't have any agenda. He's not getting rich from what he's doing. He's just an incredible scholar and researcher, and talks a lot about the kind of stuff we're talking today. So that tells you enough. That tells you all you need to know about sort of the narrative that comes from the state, and I think Wikipedia is part of that state. And I think sadly TEDx is a part of that, that too. In this case, crazily with TEDx, as I was telling you, I only had a couple of scientific claims in my talk, actually, and they were backed up by very straightforward studies from Oxford and the NIH. And I was asked to submit those sources, and I did. And the TEDx organizers told me, hey, this looks great. You've got perfect sources. You're very together. I'm sure this will be great. And luckily it was, in the sense that they approved the talk. But as you saw, they slapped that disclaimer. And the weird thing is they never responded to the sources. They never said, oh, well, this one's wrong, or this is right, or add this. They never said a single word. They just put that thing on there, and they're literally saying something. They're literally spreading misinformation in that paragraph, because they're saying that information I put from Oxford is wrong, and it's not. So it's a bizarre, and I think that's the sad part that we know about censorship these days, is that when it happens, it is faceless, nameless, and there's not a word. It's just suddenly your stuff is gone, or suddenly there's a disclaimer slapped on it, but there's no dialogue around it. There's no chance to take part in that dialogue. There's no chance to respond. And that's chilling. It's chilling for everyone, I think. But what we can do is we can just continue to talk about it openly, and continue to put, true information out there. The one thing I will say is, definitely if you're going to talk, or you're going to give a talk or write something, do make sure you got good sources, and make sure that they're legit. Because at least if you're on the side of morality, if you're on the side of actual true information, that's all you can do. And that's all I did in this case. So I also noticed the other sort of most popular talk from my weekend at Valparaiso is the other one that has a disclaimer, is the other one that has 500,000 views. So that just also tells you, I think a lot of young people that are listening right now, I can pretty much guess that if they want to find a good TEDx talk, they're going to look for the one with the disclaimer.
It's so fascinating to me. Just earlier today, I have a group on Facebook that I share news stories with fraternity and sorority advisors, just about what's going on in the fraternity and sorority community. And so I post every day, here's what's new, and it's from all different sources. I mean, it's all over the map. You can imagine anytime a story is written about fraternity and sorority life, I want to put it up there so that way people know what's being written. I'm not even giving any, what my feeling is on the topic. I just want people to know what's out there. I think it's important. And I just, Facebook sent me a couple of notices as the admin of the group, saying that they removed a couple of the news articles that were posted there from 6 months ago. And they basically admitted that this was really a computer that had picked it up. There was an actual human editor. Nobody actually looked at this. It was just a computer that basically just didn't like, a keyword, around, it was like arson or something like that. There was a fire in a fraternity house. Another one had to do with a sexual assault. And they basically just completely removed the articles without any human actually looking at it. So, I disputed it, but, I don't think anything is going to change. So anyway, I'm all up for free debate. I think fraternities and sororities started because of debate, because a lot of the universities did only want to talk about certain topics in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So the fraternities just said, fine, we'll talk about that off campus. We'll get a house and we'll just debate the issues of the day, regardless if you want to talk about it or not. It's going to be spoken about. So Anyway, so I'm all up for free debate. So that's really interesting to me. Now, many of our listeners admittedly are addicted to their phones. Okay. They can scroll on forever on TikTok and literally lose sleep over it. I know tons of people that are up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's easy to go down this rabbit hole and then lose track of time when you're on some of these social media platforms. So how do we stop this addiction we have to our phones?
Yeah. Such a good question. It feels more and more like people sort of, I don't know, this is my perception of our society. It seems like people are coming to this almost boiling point of everybody sort of finally realizing that that's kind of the main problem. We have a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
We all have a lot of problems in our society to deal with, but I feel like that one is almost the one that needs to be cured first, because with you know how it is when you're living in a state of addiction, whatever that addiction is, life has no happiness. It has no joy and wonder. It has no mystery. It has a sort of tedious, endless, sort of scroll of barely interesting information. And that's all we're reduced to. And we become slaves to the drug. I'm as I mentioned, I'm a single father of a 9-year-old. He's my third son, but so I'm going through that with him, of course, all the time, and I'm always trying to tell him about dopamine and all the things. So I'm sure he's very tired of hearing it, and I also don't want to come off as someone who's trying to lecture young people. I mean, I some of the worst addicts I know to screens are my age or older, et cetera. So, and I have my own journey, with that. Until recently, but yeah, and I think it's funny. I just want to mention one thing really quickly, which is I'm taking back my mind to San Francisco in the early '90s when I was there with my wife before we headed off to Africa, and we were sitting around every night. We had a TV, and we were sitting around every night watching TV, and it was the same. It was brainless, mindless trash, but we were sort of just, like that. And one day we both realized, this was like maybe 1996, we both kind of went, wait, what are we doing? We're losing hours of our lives. We're losing hours of sleep, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
So we killed our TV. We got rid of it. We fantasized about pushing it out the window, but that could be dangerous. So anyway, I think we gave it away or something to someone. That's not very nice, is it? It's like, oh, I'm giving up heroin. Here's my stash. Okay. But all addictions are the same. They're all the same, they really are. I just think the screen addiction is it's possibly the most addictive. I don't know if there's studies. It'd be interesting to know, to compare it to sugar, tobacco, and heroin, the other, most addictive substances on the planet. I obviously could go on forever now about what we can do. And it's something that's what I'm going to be talking about in most of the talks that I give coming up in the near future. But definitely for me, the first thing that can help is the realization that you actually can turn it off. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds very simple. I was sitting in the garden, beautiful morning, birds chirping, my wonderful son climbing a tree and telling me a story about, a rabbit he saw. And this is like, parents these days dream of a moment like this, right? Spending quality time with their kids outside in nature, and they're not asking for sugar or their tablet. And what was I doing during this? I was sitting there looking at my phone. I was doom scrolling Instagram. You don't even know where you are. You start to dissociate. You lose sense of where you are physically. You even lose sense of where you are in the phone. Like, you don't even know, like, consciously, oh, here I am. I'm going to keep looking at Instagram. No, I don't even know where the hell I am right now. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, I'm not even listening to my beautiful 9-year-old son who's doing exactly what I would ask him to do. And I just turned it off and put it down and didn't pick it up again for about 24 hours. And then I started to just work on limits. I sort of started over again. And I started to think, like, why do I even use this? Now, I get some people have to use their phones for their jobs. And that's, if you have to, you have to. But any other time that you don't have to, you can turn it off. The world will not go away. In fact, the world will come to you. I noticed that, my son has all these things he loves to do when he's in a kind of addictive phase, if you will, or if I let him be. All those things go away. Skateboarding, frisbee, sports. It goes, crochet, writing, reading, drawing. All these beautiful things that he does, they are literally taken from him by that drug. and that drug is in control. So one thing I would say to even kind of challenge people is you've got to take control back. You don't want to be a slave to that. You've got to learn to control it. Hammers are great when you need a hammer. But if I had to carry one and hang it from my ear as I walk around all day, it starts to become a pain in the ass. So make that phone a tool, not your drug, and only use it for a specific task when you want to. If you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to chill for 30 minutes and look at TikTok, great. That's fine. It's an entertainment. It's the same as going on TV. It's the same as going on YouTube. It's the same as going to the movie theater. But control it. Let it be a time. Put on a timer and be intentional about it. Okay, the movie's over now. Let's get back to real life. So there's so much more I obviously want to add in about how, more specific, concrete ways about going about that. But I think it's a shift in mindset. And we'll find that, I think a lot of the joy in life is from not knowing what's going to happen next. It's the mystery of life that we all miss. I realize that, and we there's so many things we want. If I can just have that, I want it. I realize, boy, we're usually happier without those things when we're in the stage of wanting those things. So turning off the weather, and you don't know what the weather is going to be afternoon. Suddenly you look up and there's clouds coming, and it's whoa, something crazy is happening. It's clouds covering the sun. I wasn't expecting that. It's just a moment that reconnects us kind of to the earth. That was a really bad example, but you get the point.
Yeah, I get the point. So, you're talking about doom scrolling on Instagram, and I think about that a lot. I think about the college students that are on Instagram doom scrolling and constantly comparing themselves to somebody else's best day on Instagram. I mean, with these manicured photos and, oh, this person is on the beach here. I really wish that I was on the beach with them. Thinking about all these things that I don't have that they seemingly have. Maybe they really don't, in truth. But, I think we need to be talking more about mental health, and we need to be talking more about wellness, whether that be in the workplace or whether that be in college. Like, why are these issues so important to talk about, mental health and wellness?
Yeah. There's multiple reasons, obviously, and that's a great question. For me, it sort of puts the question into place of why are we doing it? Why are we even doing what we're doing any day? Why do we even exist? And I think that if life has joy and wonder and mystery and the unexpected and touches your heart, and you have social connection to friends around you, that's really all we need to be happy. I think that's where our happiness comes from. And we have all these other things that get in the way of that happiness, all these drugs. I struggled myself with alcohol for years. Spanish red wine was my, TikTok. And it was just a way of escaping reality. It was just a way of dumbing down pain that we all have from childhood. So we all carry around these wounds and these pains. But when we get to live life in a normal way, connected to our friends and family, et cetera, touched by the earth and the senses that we get, living our lives IRL, I think most of us get through on that. But there's these things that get in our way, whether it's alcohol or TikTok or food or shopping or sex or any of the things that humans become addicted to. Life becomes pointless. When you're in that dope, it's again, I didn't even talk about dopamine, but that's essentially what's happening in each of these spaces. Is we're getting an overly large amount of dopamine from the drug, and then as soon as that's over, we are crashing and life is meaningless. So in any event, to answer your question, I think that the workplace and colleges, that just practically speaking, those are places where we have people in a group, and thus we can help them in a group. I do want to say, though, and it's something I thought about, like if I get the chance to come and speak at fraternities and sororities and at colleges, as I hope to, it's great to help people in colleges. It's great to help people in fraternities and sororities. I think it's also great to think of ways to connect with our fellow young people, or in this case, fellow young people that don't have the privilege of being in college, that are not in those spaces, because we have to reach everyone with these messages. But in any event, so within the college space, it's two reasons. It's to literally have joy in life and give it purpose again, so that there's a point of being on this crazy planet that we're all on. It also, now looking a little bit more practically, it's very hard to perform in college or in the workplace if you're depressed. It's very hard to perform in those spaces if you have low energy, if you feel overweight or suffering from chronic illness or pain. It's very, very hard. And yes, we want to perform well in those spaces. Why are we there if not to perform well? We perform well, it helps the space, it makes us feel good, we get positive feedback. It's all good if we perform well. And it is such an incredible challenge for any of us of any age to accomplish much of anything when we are in a state of addiction. And that's very much including to our screen. So I think those are some of the reasons that it's so crucial. But for me, it's really just the compassionate of knowing how I know what it feels like to be super low dopamine from being an addict, essentially. I think we all do at this space. I think we're all addicted to our screens. Almost every person, at least on this part of the planet, but in most of the planet at this point, I think is relatively addicted. And so I all know what's going through. So I think, yeah, just on a compassion level, bringing that joy and wonder back.
Mm-hmm. You described that scene where you were on your phone with your son, 9 years old, playing in the playground, right? How do we refine that mindfulness and that playfulness that we all had as children? How do we do that today as adults when meanwhile, we're so stressed out about work and money and relationships and all the things that adults have to do, right? But I
Yeah.
think there's a benefit to where your son was at that moment of wonder and playfulness. How do we get back to that?
Yeah. Yeah. Such a good question. And I know, again, I know I don't want to go on too long because I know your listeners don't want to hear me blabber on probably much longer. So I'll try to be quick in these answers, which I'm really bad at. But so mindful, I'm going to split them up just for a second. Mindfulness and playfulness.
Yeah.
They're both so crucial to who we are as human beings, who we were before the Industrial Revolution and before the technology revolution, and when we were living a little bit closer to the earth, et cetera, kind of the way we used to. Mindfulness for me is, first of all, we've got to turn the screen off. There's no way to be mindful if you have an active screen on your body or within arm's reach. So that's number one. And even just try it for 30 minutes. I teach people about grounding. So touching barefoot to the earth, 30 minutes, same. You could do them at the same time. You could walk around barefoot in the park and have your screen off in the car or whatever, but try 30 minutes, screen off, and try to notice what's happening. Once you get over the anguish of, where's my freaking phone? Notice what's happening in your brain as you start to become aware. What I was going to say is, this is something that we do for those who are suffering from PTSD and getting over trauma, which is checking in with your senses. So if you're in the park, you're outside, I would say go outside, turn your phone off, 30 minutes. Check in with your senses. Close your eyes and check in with the sounds. Start to listen to the sounds. Because those are things these are tactile things. That's the name of my company, is Tactile Land. And it's all based on exactly what we're talking about. I think we as humans need tactile sensory experiences to really touch our hearts and connect us to the earth and to other people. So be aware of the sounds you hear. See if you smell anything. Just checking with your hands. If you're sitting outside, what are they touching, etc. That'll help ground us and bring back a bit of mindfulness. It's really about, I know it's hard, but it's about staying in the present, starting to just focus on, I'm okay here right now where I am. I don't need anything. I don't need a drug. I don't need to know what's going to happen in the future. Just sitting here on this planet for 1 second, like right now, you could say it's a privilege to be alive. You could say, I'm just grateful to be alive. Or I think gratitude is a great way to go to for reconnecting us. And in terms of playfulness, something I want to start working with, I would say with men on, but I'm not trying to be exclusive. I'm a man, and there's certain things that, we deal with as fathers or whatever. But in general, I want to work with people on refining playfulness and allowing ourselves those moments to go out into a park and be nature and just be weird and silly. I think about this a lot as I'm running down the trail in Sedona. I do comedy skits as well. So some of these start to verge into the silly. I picture me helping 20 men behind me, and I'm making them do this goofy run where we're sort of letting our bodies jerk like this as we run down the trail. And that would actually also be a comedy skit. But I think when we let ourselves play, we let ourselves be silly and goofy and stupid, being funny and doing comedy, as I say, you actually can bring about that feeling of happiness and sort of playfulness by letting your body be weird, letting your body jerk and shake around, do a weird dance, just be a total fucking freak, basically. That's my final advice to everyone. Thank you so much for listening.
Welcome to my TEDx talk. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Really, really good stuff.
That disclaimer is going to be right on their heart, just a big circle. This guy's a fucking nut job. Don't listen to him.
So, I love where you live out in Sedona. It was just absolutely picturesque, a stunning place to go and visit. Nothing like you've ever seen. If you've never been to Arizona, go to Sedona and you'll see things that will look like a movie set to you because it's just so foreign in terms of just what nature looks like for a lot of the rest of the country. So when I go there next, which I know I'm going to go back because my mom lives really close by in Prescott.
Oh, yeah.
Where should I go for like a really good restaurant in the area that you highly recommend?
Okay. Well, let me first mention one I know in Prescott, and it's not a fancy place, but it's really good. Okay,
Yeah.
well, you're from New York, so take that with a grain of salt.
I have everything. It's okay.
All right. But there's a cool little tapas place overlooking a creek in Prescott. I think it's Gato Azul. Is that
Nice.
the blue cat? Amazing stuff, and also not very quite on the cheap side. Like lots of little plates you can get for very cheap. So that's a good one.
I think I've actually been to that restaurant. It's in a shopping mall right at the end of the shopping mall, right? It's like at the corner of the shopping mall, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. I've actually had food there, and you're absolutely right. It is tremendous. It is very, very good. Been there.
Oh, nice. Okay. So in Sedona, there's an amazing place here that most visitors don't know about. It's also, again, this is I'm going to think of a fancy one, but this is a not fancy one, but it is authentic. It's called Tortas de Fuego.
Okay.
Fire tortas. And it's right in the middle of West Sedona. It's not far from, Whole Foods or whatever, but it's an extremely authentic Mexican restaurant. And they have this thing called it's called like the mulateque, something like that. It's just like a huge smorgasbord of insane treats from Oaxaca and other parts of Mexico. So Tortas de Fuego is an unknown little stop here. Elote, did you manage to go to Elote when you were here before?
No, okay. I didn't go there.
Okay, Elote is the best restaurant in northern Arizona. Wonderful vibe, wonderful, incredible food. Sort of a modern fusion Mexican, I guess you could say. Insane food, so yummy. So that's but get your reservations today.
Yeah.
Once you know your dates, because it'll. And I'll tell you, once you're here, if somehow you don't get reservations, I'll tell you a secret hack once you're here, but better to just go ahead because it can be months ahead of time.
Yeah.
And one more I wanted to point out, not in Sedona, but if you're up for a drive and it's kind of a fun, you could drive up to Flag through the canyon and then down the freeway to La Posada. La Posada is a beautiful old kind of Spanish colonial style hotel is that Winslow? It's like the town going towards Albuquerque. I'm forgetting. But anyway, they have a wonderful restaurant for brunch. You go and take your mom there and stay one night there, and then have brunch or whatever. But that's the restaurant in La Posada is also wonderful.
Great recommendations. I know you know what you're talking about because a lot of these restaurants I've either eaten at or I've heard of and I need to go. So I know that they're really, really good spots. Good food clearly in Arizona, which is exactly what I was looking for. So that way I know where to go next time. And you're right. I got to get reservations like now. So that way I know I can get a seat.
100%.
Really good stuff. All right. So if our listeners, if they want to book you to speak on their college campus, where should they go in order to connect with you?
Absolutely. I mean, one easy place to go is to find me on LinkedIn. Very easy to find me there. My DMs are open. Not a problem. It's linked. I mean, my personal address there is LinkedIn/Tactile Land. So my company is called Tactile Land, as we talked about a bit before. And that's also where they can find me. So it's tactileland.com. Right on the landing page there, you can book a call or et cetera to talk more. Tactile, just for those who don't know, is TACTILE. Tactileland.com is the website.
Perfect. All right. So go to the website, tactileland.com, or look him up on LinkedIn. His name is Jason Corder, and his DMs are always open. Feel free to send him a message there. That's where I connected with him. We were able to just message each other back and forth on LinkedIn, and it worked out perfectly. So, Jason, thank you so much for sharing all this great wisdom. And I do hope that all of our listeners are going watch your TEDx talk as well. It's called Social Closeness and Re-Establishing Connection. And I think that'll really give you a good summary of kind of what Jason is able to deliver. Of course, TEDx wants us to deliver the world in 15 minutes. It's not always possible. We do the best we can. Normally on a college campus, we can make that 60 minutes and we can make it a little bit more interactive and more complete, but you'll get a good sense of it on the TEDx talk. So great job, Jason. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. It's a huge pleasure. And anyone that'll, listen for this long to me blabber on, I'm, grateful. So.
Absolutely. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Jason today, I want you to like and share this Fraternity Foodie Podcast interview so that way more college students get an opportunity to hear all the great stuff that Jason is involved with. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Bye for now.